Horror movie history is full of examples of great twists. Plenty of horrors have left audiences with a tremendous sense of, what just happened? And have become famous off the back of their well-executed plot swerves. From slashers to psychological, supernatural to good old-fashioned monster movies, if you like to be surprised as well as scared, then these are the movies for you. Obviously, there will be major spoilers ahead. The list kind of doesn't work otherwise. I'm Sean Verrick for What Culture Horror, and here are 10 underrated horror movies with unexpected twists. Number 10, Valentine. Most people have some sort of anecdote about being rejected on Valentine's Day, but this film from 2001 takes the idea to the bloody extreme. Young Jeremy Melton is told no by 4 girls, then betrayed by another who said yes at first. Many years later, these women are picked off by a murderer wearing a Cupid mask. Kate is convinced that Jeremy has returned to get his revenge, but it turns out that the killer was actually Dorothy, the girl who turned her back on Jeremy all those years ago. However, in a rare double twist, things take a turn again. It transpires that Dorothy was just a scapegoat, and that the real killer was Adam, Kate's boyfriend. Then, it's revealed that Adam is actually Jeremy, who has undergone surgery to change his face. Triple twist! Taking the audience on such a wild goose chase, only to land back at the obvious conclusion, might seem like a cop-out, but Valentine does a good job disguising its plans, and the ending comes after a rather enjoyable ride. Number 9, Oculus. Instead of a horror movie about a killer VR headset, which if it hasn't already been made should definitely get made, 2013's Oculus is actually about a haunted mirror. A brother and sister, played by Brenton Thwaites and Karen Gillan, investigate the cursed wall hanging that's been giving them grief ever since they were kids. As a boy, Tim was taken into custody over the death of his father, but he's always maintained it was the mirror's fault. It's up to Kaylee to prove him right. The mirror's whole shtick is that it causes people to see things that aren't actually there, which is a nice thematic beat, and the inability to establish reality ultimately leads to the siblings' downfall. Towards the end of the movie, Tim goes to destroy the mirror by releasing a giant anchor stored in the ceiling. While he is successful in smashing it, his tormentor plays one final cruel trick on him. Kaylee was in the path of the anchor, obscured from Tim's view by the mirror, and she too is killed. Tim ends Oculus being arrested once again, still claiming it wasn't his fault. Number 8, Dark Circles. Alex and Penny are a young couple who have just had a baby. Being responsible adults, they decide to move out of the city and into a more rural area, where their child can grow up happy and safe. As it turns out, this was the worst possible thing they could have done. The pair's new home is haunted by what seems to be the ghost of a young woman. At first, this seems to be the result of a sleep-deprived new parent, but it quickly becomes apparent that this unwelcome intruder is very, very real. It seems for the longest time that Dark Circles is going the way of every other haunted house flick, heading towards one last confrontation with the ghoul. That's when it plays out its full hand. The so-called ghost isn't a ghost at all. She's a real woman. The wannabe spectre is actually suffering from trauma following the loss of her own baby sometime prior to the events of the film. This is a complete subversion of the expectations and frames the events of the movie through an entirely different lens. Number 7, The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Before he was swearing up a storm in Succession, Brian Cox was playing a coroner in the 2016 horror movie The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Cox plays Tommy Tilden, who, along with his son Austin, gets embroiled in the mysterious case of a young woman's dead body. The unidentified female has no clear cause of death, leaving the Tildens baffled, and things only get weirder from there. Spooky things begin to happen at the morgue, including a series of apparitions that lead Austin to accidentally kill his girlfriend with an axe, and the father and son duo reach the conclusion that the corpse is somehow playing a part in all this mayhem, which leads them to make one hell of a discovery. The titular Jane Doe was once a woman from the 17th century who was falsely executed as part of the Salem witch trials. In killing an innocent woman, the witch hunters inadvertently transformed her into the very thing they were trying to stop, and Jane has been taking her revenge on humanity ever since. Imagine the paperwork Tommy and Austin are going to need to fill this one in for. Number 6, The Slayer. Also known as Nightmare Island in some circles, The Slayer is one of the less well-known video nasties that took the horror world by storm in the 1980s. It stars Sarah Kendall as Kay, an artist who is on vacation with her family and friends. She's also suffering from incredibly disturbing dreams, which should give you an indication of where things are going. A hurricane traps the group on their remote island holiday site, and predictably, there's something else there that begins to pick them off one by one. Sarah must learn to harness the power of her dreams before it's too late. The Slayer's final confrontation scene sees Sarah come face to face with the killer, who is a skeleton monster that also happens to be on fire. Just when it seems like all hope is lost, Sarah wakes up. It was all a dream. Not just any dream, though. Sarah has woken up as a child on Christmas morning and realizes that what she was seeing in her sleep was actually a vision of things to come in her adult life. So much for a Merry Christmas. Number 5, Fall. 2022's Fall isn't always classed as horror, but once you've seen it, you'll know why it's on this list. Becky and Hunter are two best pals who, like most cool people you know, are really into climbing. These two daredevils set themselves the challenge of scaling an abandoned 2,000-foot communications tower, and wouldn't you know, it goes horribly wrong. Who saw that coming? Basically, the two adventurers get stuck at the top of the tower, unable to get down or call for help. They must work out how to get down whilst also staving off hunger and thirst, which are playing havoc with their sanities. Towards the end of the film, Becky comes up with a plan and goes to tell her friend. It is then revealed that she's been hallucinating Hunter for some time now, as Hunter actually fell to her death while attempting to retrieve a backpack. This might seem a little out of nowhere, but it's pulled off really well. It ends up playing a big role in the movie's climax. It's also really sad, as if this movie needed any more bad emotions attached to it. Number 4. 1BR. The name 1BR isn't the result of someone falling asleep at a keyboard, it's real estate shorthand for one bedroom. This 2019 film centers on fashion student Sarah, who moves into a small flat in a housing complex in Los Angeles and quickly befriends her neighbors. At first, Sarah seems to have hit the jackpot, but as with most things in LA, nothing is as it seems. It transpires that her neighborhood is one big cult, and the people who she thought were being friendly to her are actually trying to convert her. She eventually succumbs to their brainwashing and is forced to initiate other potential residents, including her best friend, Lisa. Played by Celeste Sully, Lisa is able to snap Sarah out of her spell, and the two plot an escape. Sarah makes it out alive and celebrates in the street, which is when something awful dawns on her. All of the houses in the surrounding area are part of the same building firm as her complex. Therefore, all of the people that live in them are also cult members, just when Sarah thought she was safe. Number 3. Goodnight Mommy. In 2022, Naomi Watts starred in a film called Goodnight Mommy that received less than stellar reviews from critics. Thankfully, it was based on a much better Austrian movie from 8 years earlier. An unnamed woman is recovering at home from reconstructive facial surgery with her two 10-year-old boys, Elias and Lucas. Her face is covered in bandages, and she insists that the children don't speak in the house and keep the blinds closed. Naturally, the kids get suspicious. Elias and Lucas deduce that this woman is not their mother and attempt to get the truth out of her. Think The Parent Trap, only much, much worse. Just when it feels like you've got Goodnight Mommy all figured out, it totally flips the script. It turns out that the bandaged woman is actually the twins' real mother, and furthermore, they aren't actually twins anymore. Sadly, Lucas is revealed to have died in a tragic accident several months earlier. Elias is hallucinating him to cope with the trauma, which also feeds into his paranoia surrounding his guardian. Number 2. The Dark and the Wicked. From 2020 comes The Dark and the Wicked, a story that is definitely both of those things. Louise and Michael are not the luckiest of folks. Not only is their father suffering from a terminal illness, but their mother has also recently taken her own life. As it transpires, these two things are not separate from one another. Their father is actually possessed by a demon, which is draining him of his life force. As the siblings attempt to flush it out, the spirit becomes more and more violent, using its powers to create nightmarish visions to drive its enemies into madness. Michael decides that he's had enough and rushes home to his wife and daughters, but when he gets there, he finds them dead, victims of the demon. Distraught, Michael takes his own life. If you thought that was grim, look at what happens next. As Michael lies dying on the floor, his wife and daughters arrive home alive and well. Their corpses were merely hallucinations courtesy of the evil entity, which Michael realizes right before he slips away. Number 1. Intrusion. People keep secrets from their partners, that's just a fact of life. Unfortunately for the main character in 2021's Intrusion, her hubby is hiding much more than a cheeky trip to the pub. Mira Parsons moves out to the suburbs with her architect husband Henry. One night, their house is broken into and Henry deals with the intruders by shooting one of them, which understandably catches Mira off guard. She begins to suspect that all is not right with the nice and friendly guy she married. Mira begins to investigate and discovers that the intruders were former employees of her husband's firm, and that all of them are linked to the recent disappearance of a young girl. The really dark twist comes when Mira goes poking around in Henry's office, where she discovers a secret door leading down to an underground room. Inside, she finds the missing girl. Henry has designed and built their family home as a means of imprisoning and torturing women. With nowhere to run to, Mira must confront Henry face on, an utterly terrifying prospect.